And we're live! Welcome to Office Hours with Arrow, a LinkedIn Live event hosted by Arrow leaders who care about what senior living looks like. I'm your host and producer, Rachel Sheehan, and today I have 4 wonderful guests with me because our topic is all about dirty words and dignified culture. So, what I want to know from you all is a short little introduction, maybe who you are, what your job is, and then your favorite Arrow dirty word swap.
So, hello, everyone. My name is Gregory Dearlum. I'm the Managing Director of Marketing, and I love my swap because it's one that is very commonly heard, I think, in our industry, which is apartment for room. I like to say my room is where I went when I was a bad little guy, and room just paints a very isolated picture of being alone and just know where anyone wants to be. So it's also kind of like a dorm room also. So not the most glamorous thing. Let's go for apartment.
Hello there, Rob Bequette. I'm one of the managing director of sales for Arrow. My favorite swap is probably facility versus community. When I think of a facility, I think of a very sterile environment, and a lot of seniors that we help through this process, through this journey, they're looking for that home-like environment. You know, they're coming from home typically, and I think for dignity purposes, to me, facility just kind of feels a little icky or sounds a little icky. So a community for me is really good. So my favorite's facility versus community.
I am Paisley DeRuza. I am also managing director for sales. And kind of going off of what Rob said, my favorite swap is going to be move-in for admission. So as he mentioned, moving from home, making a community feel like home. Admission feels very clinical to me. So I appreciate the term move-in.
Hi guys, Cassie Tweeten, Chief Sales Officer for Arrow. So glad we're talking about this topic. I think one of my favorite swaps is briefs, using the term briefs versus diapers. Whenever I hear someone call briefs a diaper, it feels very like cringy and kind of infantile and disrespectful. And so that's probably one of my favorites. And I'm so glad we're talking about this today because I think one of the really cool things about Arrow is like our commitment to like changing the way we think and changing the way we speak. I think one of our first sessions, we introduced Michael Buckley, our chief feelings officer, our life coach, and we just put so much emphasis on like getting our brains right, getting the words right, making sure that we are having a positive change in the industry. And so I think I love that we're talking about dirty words because there are some rough ones out there, right? So I really appreciate the commitment to kind of work towards respectful, thoughtful ways that we approach senior housing. So.
Yeah. Gregory, do you want to, I know we mentioned a few of our dirty words, but do you want to talk more about how this came about, our dictionary of dirty words and maybe a few more examples?
Sure. So we've been compiling a dictionary of our dirty words for a good while now. Some of them, I think, that we've heard so far don't sting quite as bad as some of the other ones. We kind of like eased into this, I think, with some little softer ones that still aren't very pleasant, but are still not some of the worst of the bunch. So we have a nice long dictionary of about 25 or so, which we're always constantly adding to. But a few, in addition to the ones that we've already mentioned, are we've really talked about. I mean, patient, maybe we don't hear as much, but clearly we refer to everyone living in our communities as our residents. Even something as simple as activity, it's just so much nicer to say an event or a program that we're hosting within the community. Wings or units, and changing that verbiage to neighborhoods. Locked unit, I think that makes all of us really cringe, which is a secure neighborhood, which sounds so much more lovely and so much more like a place that we would all want to be and spend our time. Behaviors is another swap for personal actions. Like personal actions is a much like more wonderful way to say behaviors. And then occupancy potentially as opposed to census. And then also even something as simple as wellness office as opposed to nurse's station. And then this one is a tough one, changing out the word feeder for assistance with feeding or assistance with meals. Very much more dignified.
Well, and I think you did a great job just kind of like giving a global overview of really kind of the areas where we focus on that change. But even as you were saying them, like what I think is interesting is as we've committed to the change, like when we go out into the world and engage and we hear people say those words, like you have like a physical response to them. And I know, as we all know, our industry is really small. And oftentimes if you've worked in one community in senior living, you might transfer to another community, or, you know, if you're in the industry, you might travel through. And I think that's a really interesting thing that drives towards our culture is like, we do have to kind of force the conversation. And I think, Rob, this is a great topic. You're really great at this, is like when we meet someone using one of those other words, what's the thing that we do, Rob? Like, you're great at speaking on it.
Yeah, I'm notorious for just saying a what? And room comes to mind first because people say I have to go to room 123. It's like, what's a room? Or you said what? Like, oh, I mean apartment. I mean apartment. A lot of times people joke because they say, I never say room unless you're around, Rob. And I was like, no. And it really is about, changing behavior. As you said, Cassie, a lot of folks will join our organization from other operators potentially, or from the clinical background, and maybe that's been their language for their tenure. So it is really about coaching in the moment and really just in a joking way, hey, how about we use this language? Or hey, I think over time it just takes a little bit of time to kind of catch on to that. Myself, I never came from senior living, so I don't want to say it was easy, but I found myself saying the F word a lot. Facility, facility. A lot of times on interviews, folks will say, your facility is beautiful, or I've known about your facility, and I don't correct them during an interview. But as folks join our organization, know we really do owe it to ourselves and to our residents, also to kind of correct that behavior. And it does take time sometimes, though.
I also think that one of my favorite quotes by Maya Angelou is, people will forget what you said and they'll forget what you do, but people will not forget the way that you made them feel. And I think that this topic runs parallel with that, because the way that we act directly influences the way that we make people feel. And our chief operating officer, Amanda Tweeten, had said this, and it stuck with me, but words have power, and we spend a lot of time and energy focusing on the way that we think, and that influences the way that we act. And so as a result, hopefully it influences the way that people feel.
And I do think it's a cultural choice. So I think that's one of the reasons we wanted to come in and even talk about this topic, because maybe years and years and years ago, when senior living started, it was a clinical and institutional type environment, and it's an ever evolving space. And I think we've got to evolve with the times, and we've got to be able to have bigger conversations about, like, maybe we used to say that, but in 2024, we don't say that anymore. And I think we are committed as a group, not only to say in 2024, we don't say that anymore from a word and cultural perspective, but like what's acceptable and what we'll look for in a culture. And so I think that's why I really like talking about this. And maybe we ask the comment section to throw out their favorite dirty word swap too, because I think that I think Gregory said, we add these things every day. We are out in the world, in the communities. Somebody says something, it hits wrong inside of it doesn't align with our core values. It doesn't align with kind of where we're at. And then we bring it to the table and we say, is this a dirty word swap out? And we're all kind of committed to what's the better word? How are we using a different kind of dialogue? So, I mean, I really think it's a very interesting topic to talk about. And we're talking about it because we want everybody to do it, right? Like, this is not a secret we want to keep. This is something we want to see really used industry-wide.
Yeah, and I love, this is so relevant to us right now because we just rolled out last week a new dirty word for us. And I think we took away special care as our dirty word. But I think it's important, like you said, that we're committed to this evolving dictionary, and it's grown and grown and grown. And I just love that. I think that's huge. So I know you did ask some dirty words, and people are, yes, they are definitely, room is the dirtiest word ever. Events and not activities, diaper feeder, those words irk my soul. Yeah, a lot of people don't like the room one, for sure. Activities is mine too, coming from that background. I always say activities what I do with my 2-year-old, not my residents. And I think that's huge. So yeah, facilities, Shannon said, that F word, it gets you.
Well, and I think once we start to talk about dirty words, we also start to talk about how we communicate. Another hot button issue for us is like pet names and engagement with residents. Like no honey, no sweetie, because it really does come off more condescending and disrespectful than it comes off as I think it's meant, which is like a term of endearment. And so I think that we start to have the conversation about specific words that don't work, but then it's also like communication approaches. So I know for sure that's one of the topics we talk about.
And I think also to Cassie's point, senior living is something that we do with someone, not to someone. And so I think that really is reflected in the way that we're speaking to other human beings.
Yeah, and that actually reminded me what you were saying about making them feel. I think from a sales perspective, this is huge because you never want a resident to feel like you're just talking about them or around them. And so I think using this inclusive culture always makes them feel like part of the conversation.
And I love that you said that, because I think that there are like things we say in-house, right? Ways that we communicate in-house, ways that we communicate out of house. And I think, Gregory and our marketing team does such a beautiful job, really. And I think, Gregory, if you want to speak to this, like they do such a beautiful job about the way that we connect with the outside world, who we like lovingly refer to as strangers, right? Like, how do we speak to strangers about senior living and how do we use the right kind of words? So Gregory, do you want to speak to the hard work that your team does to like make sure that we're thoughtful that way?
Sure, of course. That's a great thing. As we were chatting, I'm like, we're in the community, and we're definitely coming from a marketing perspective. Now it's like, what about on the front side? We're in the building, we're with our residents, we're with our staff, but it's like really having that message, projecting that message out initially through, as Paisley was talking about, like the power of words and our power words. I think from a marketing perspective, it really is about what we say, but it's also what we don't say that really sets us apart. Really, if we're using the right verbiage and the right terminology, we're capturing a reader and or a listener's attention. That's really the goal. We want to pique interest, and we want to do that from a point of positivity. And that's everything that's the way, that we present ourselves, that we look. It's the things that we say. It's in our copy on all of our materials. But it really is, it's like, I think about dirty words and how they just reinforce so many negative perceptions about senior living. It's just like, it's icky, and it feels that way. And from a marketing perspective, it really is about, we still have to be mindful of dirty words, and in our search browsers, in all of our things, the work that we're doing to improve our SEO, and having anyone who's looking for senior living or any of the things that we've been talking about up to this point, if they're searching for it, these are the words. They're searching facility. They're searching for so many of the other things that we've mentioned that are just kind of like, we're not going to, say that. We have to be aware of it just so we have that in our search bars, in our optimization. That's what seniors, that's what their adult children are searching for. So it's like we almost have to have all that in our back pocket. It's kind of hidden in our digital strategies. It's hidden on our websites, and it's like you can find us through a dirty word, but you're not going to see it presented in anything that we put out, because that's not who we are. But we want to be able to be visible online. So it's a really interesting kind of like dance between the two of being able to show up and not really saying those things out loud.
Well, and I think too, Gregory, like we debate the terms we use. Like content is put in front of us, and then we all get to look at it and kind of say, how does it make me feel? I think sometimes we think about, or it is common to think about seniors as different than us. but they are not different than us. They are just older than us. And I think that that's the really interesting thing that we as a collective do is we look at the content and we say, how does it make me feel? How would I feel if I was reading it? And like, we will meticulously look at content that goes out and say, oh, we would never say we allow you to do this. You're allowed to, we would never say that. I think Paisley again brings up a great point. We do this with you, not to you. Like senior living is not something you should ever do to someone. And I think that that's like at the root of our culture. It really is about like, we're doing senior living we want to live in. That's really what it comes down to is like, we're building for the future. What does that have to be? And so, yeah, I really appreciate that our company focuses on that for sure.
I would also add, I see Stephanie's comment, they versus us or we. And as we, we have to remember that we're all in this together. We're all here to provide quality services and a home-like environment for our residents and our employees and all of us too. So there's nothing worse than hearing they are making us do this or corporate is doing this to us. If you really think about it, we are all in this together. So Stephanie, definitely appreciate your comment. And I'm probably another one that likes to point that one out too. It's like, no, us, let's corral together, let's come together and come up with a solution to whatever we're talking about. So
yeah, which corporate, another icky word for us. We like home office. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love too. Amanda is asking, she really hopes others in the industry will join us in getting rid of dirty words. And so do any of you have kind of advice, like how to start this? I know it can seem overwhelming because we have this big, long list, but how would you suggest somebody start this in their community?
Well, I would say change. We all know that change is never easy, right? I think that sometimes we can fear change because we don't know how it's going to turn out. One of the things I really like to say to our teams is everything is figure outable. If you really think about it, there's nothing that you come up against that you couldn't figure out. And it's also interesting that when we worry for the future, how many of those horrible worry things actually happen, right? More often than not, it doesn't turn out poorly. It turns out well. And I think with a situation like this where you're actually going to commit to having the conversation, like we shouldn't shy away from the difficult conversation about making this a better place to be. And so like for me, step one is just like starting to assess what kind of words are used in your organization that you'd like to do alternate words for. One of the things Buck works with us on is like your thought, a bridge thought, and then the right thought. So maybe what you're looking at is what is the bad word? What's a slightly better word? And then what's the best word for us to use, right? Like how do we start to think of ourselves in that kind of way? But again, I think it could be bad, but it also could be really great. And I think that what most of our company would tell you is it feels better to use a better word. I don't know what you guys, what else you guys would share on that.
I think that committing to the conversation also means committing to being comfortable calling it out. Like Rob had mentioned in the beginning, you can do it in a lighthearted way. Also being comfortable making quote unquote mistakes. Like there are times that I've used dirty words. This is my 10th year with the company. I still will accidentally say the wrong word and then correct myself, or Rob or Cassie will catch it for me, etc. And I think it's just, you're committing to that growth. You're committing to evolving because that's what you want to represent.
Yeah, I would just kind of jump in to say, I think for all of us, as we were kind of talking through this topic, it's just like starting small, and we have some of our key offenders. It's just like, what are those words that are just so common that you hear them on a regular basis, and training your brain to just kind of stop. And for all of us, there's certain words that it just puts the brakes on as soon as we hear them. But I would just identify some of those, that terminology that is important to you and to your team. I maybe move on to some of the things where I think there's so many words and phrases that can be ageist, to Cassie's point earlier, that we don't even mean for them to be, like calling a senior kiddo or something just like very it's just, it's not dignified at all. And then really working, like continuing, like starting small, but also continuing to expand and grow. And I think this was exciting to me to even start thinking about just in this moment. It's just like, how do we start adding phrases and just things that we can really start to kind of like, we're starting with words and then we're going to build to phrases, as to just adding things on your blank for your age, or some, you know, like something like that, that just like takes it to a whole nother place. And again, it's just not, it has nothing to do with promoting dignity within our organization and to those that we serve.
I think you can think of the golden rule. I mean, treat others the way that you want to be treated. When you're speaking to people, how do you want to be spoken to? How does something that you would say out loud, how would that make you feel if somebody else said it to you in the same exact verbiage? I mean, I feel like that's the easiest or most simple way to start, is just human to human. How would I want to be treated? And making changes from there.
Yeah, and I think also asking the residents sometimes, because when I was in college, gerontology, we were always told they're older adults. But then when I started working in one of our communities, they're like, that feels weird. Like, just call us seniors. And so I think, asking them some of these things, like, how does this make you feel, is huge to get their direct feedback.
Well, and I think to what Gregory's saying about like getting excited to add more things, like what is great is like you have to start somewhere, but like we are going to always be evolving. So like there could be a point where community feels like a dirty word to us, and somehow we've evolved past that being the understanding. I think as a society, right, we know more than we've ever known before. We're consuming lots of different information. We're at a place where we're seeing lots of different kinds of perspectives of people. And I think Gregory brings up a great point. Like, you look great for your age. That, thank you, but that could also feel offensive. Like, you know, and how do we work on meeting someone where they're at, being thoughtful and respectful, and then kind of checking what and how we might speak about things, because sometimes it's just a casualness. Sometimes it's just we've always done it, so we don't think it's bad. But I think any kind of like self-reflection about the way that we interact is probably really great, because then it starts the conversation to say, ooh, I never would have thought that was something that made someone uncomfortable. And I think this goes both ways. It's somebody being also able to say, that word didn't feel right to me. That statement didn't feel right to me. How do we get people comfortable to say, Gregory had the best of intentions when he told me I look great for my age. However, please don't say that again. You know what I mean? Like, how do we get ourselves into that kind of conversation? And we try to breed that here. What were you going to say, Rob?
I would also add, like, celebrate also. You know, you might have a list of 5, like you said, start small. We have a long list of words, but, you know, start small. Maybe you conquer 1 or 2 or 3 and you celebrate that. And not celebrate inside only to yourself, but if you hear somebody that's slowly transitioning to more appropriate language, like, hey, you're finally saying apartment after you've worked with us 5 years and you've been trying so hard. So again, I think sometimes we forget to celebrate the small victories. And I think that in itself can really embrace a positive future also.
And I love that you're not, like, I go back to when you said you kind of joke with people to correct them, because we're not trying to make anyone feel bad. It's just like we're all growing and learning. And I did want to add Charlie's question up here too. How are line staff trained on and reinforced with the dirty word list? Anybody wants to touch on that?
So it is something that comes up in orientation. All of our new hires are going to go through orientation, and then it's something that comes up a lot. Like, we're always, I mean, I was on calls this morning and talked about dirty words. Like, we are always kind of talking about it and trying to work through philosophy and talk through philosophy. And we have Relias training on it. Like, it's something that is really similarly to our core values. Like, it's just something that we are always kind of in conversation about and talking through. I don't know, Rob or Paisley, Gregory, if you want to share any additional texture there.
No, I think it's just, like you said, everyday language we kind of talk through. It isn't like you get one handout at orientation and it's once and done. It really does come up in a lot of our conversations. And again, we're a very collaborative organization, so we all feel pretty comfortable talking about it openly, just like, as Cassie said, the core values or any other super important initiatives as a company. I think it has to stay fresh and top of mind in order for it to continue to evolve and improve for sure.
Yeah, I was just going to add, my mind went to core values before you said it, Cassie. So I would just agree with that. I think that our core values help us to be better. They help us to continue to have the same vision and aim to be something in senior living. And I think that's the same thing with our dirty words concept.
Yeah, dirty words don't defend the dignity of others. That's just the bottom line. So yes, it's who we are, and it's just really ingrained also in everything that we do.
Well, and I also think I see that Amanda just asked us a question. I don't know, Rachel, if you want to throw it up on the screen or not. So I will say this, and I think weird that Amanda and I were on the same train of thought here. Like, our culture isn't for everyone. Like, there are things that we're doing, and I think if you're following or engaging in our LinkedIn lives, like we are committing and trying very hard to continue to grow and evolve in our culture. And we have that kind of through line. And I think you might not agree with it, and we just might not be the right place for you. I think we don't have a culture that is necessarily super common in this industry. We're doing some things that are outside the box. We're doing some things that might make you feel a little wheezy queasy. But I think we are committed to being that voice. We're committed to that change. And I think her question exactly, do you think community culture is influenced by the Dirty Words initiative? And I think it is. Like, I think at our core, we are here to continue to grow and evolve the senior living industry to meet us and feature us and make sure that we're building where we would like to be. So I don't know if you guys have any additional texture to that, but I think we're a culture, and you might like us or you just might not.
I think that one of my favorite things that come up often if I'm in interviews with people is that I believe that you hire for heart and you can teach skill. And I think that aligns with that culture piece of things is at least in my experience with everyone that we've worked with, I think that everyone has a heart. Everyone has a heart for what we do and for our culture and for what we're aiming to create in senior living. And so I think, yes, I agree with what you said, Cassie. It is, it's a special place to be. And I think that you have to want to be here and want to commit to those things like the Dirty Word Initiative to continue to create the environment.
I mean, often on interviews, I hear someone that's researched a company, whether it be Arrow or the community directly, and they do read our core values. They follow us on social media and our TikToks and all those things. And we often hear, like, it seems like such a different operator to work for. And, people often ask too, what keeps you working for Arrow? And I usually say it's our culture. We're very collaborative. We have a lot of resources. I worked for other companies, not in the senior living arena, but to where you don't have that connection and those opportunities to grow as a company or grow as an employee within the company, and just a lot of opportunities. And that's one thing that I'm super grateful for working at Arrow. So again, collaboration is really key with us, and I think collaboration and culture go hand in hand for sure.
I'll just add one other quick thing to the culture. We've talked about this, and it's kind of been an underlying theme of the entire conversation, but it's just like our company culture is influenced by like the dirty words by not using them. But I think it's really just it's influence. It sets the stage for. I just jotted down 3 things as I listened, to the other 4 of you speak about this too. It's just like I wrote down it fosters kindness, an environment of kindness, an environment of positivity, and just being respectful of others. And it's like, if we have those at our core, it's for all of our cultures and traditions and everything that we celebrate and acknowledge in our communities. We are one big happy family. I don't know how else to say it. It's just like we accept others for who they are, and we celebrate our differences. And it's just like removing things that could be even remotely offensive to someone else and getting those out of our vocabulary is just a great first step in fostering that community culture.
Yeah, and I think it's also like being vulnerable to knowing, and I know someone said it while we were on here, but like we might not do it right. It like as we approach the culture and the change in senior living, as we approach dirty words, as we approach being an inclusive environment, like we are committed to figuring it out. And I think that's the thing Paisley talked about it. We hire for heart, we train for skill. As a company, we know we're not always going to be perfect. And it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up to do your best and then figuring out how you work through when it isn't. And I think that's the thing. Dirty words is just the start of it, but it's like, that's a commitment we're making to showing up as our best selves. So that's why I think if you haven't committed to looking at the words you're using, this is a great time to like take that and just say, what word could we change? Just pick one word to start with and see how it starts to feel inside your community.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this and you want to join in with us, we can send you our list of dirty words. Just shoot Arrow or myself a message on LinkedIn, and we will be happy to share that with you. So I think we did it, guys. Thank you
We did
so
it, guys.
much. Next week, same place, same time, we'll have a conversation on diversity, equity, inclusion, creating a belonging space at work. So we would love to see you then. Until then, thank you. Bye.
Thank you.